Rockinitis.
Well, I want to go to heaven, but I've been told the Rockinitis has got my soul. Been rocking and rolling till the break of dawn. Wonder if my baby's still at home. Well, I tried to make it in before the sun, but the Rockinitis wouldn't let me run. Oh, baby, baby, give me one more chance. When I heard that beat, I just had to dance.
Hi, cats and kittens. Welcome to Rockinitis. You know, when I do this show, I'm a researcher, I'm a disc jockey, I'm a producer, but mostly I'm a low-level entertainer. I'm also a co-host, and my partner in crime is Rob Frith, who has a great record store between 19th and 20th on Main Street.
That's right.
And we're going to do a show right now called Monster Music, which is a legitimate genre in rock and roll. And one of the first monster music tunes that ever was by Sheb Wooley. This came out in 1958, and it was called The Purple People Eater. Now, when you think about this tune, I mean, does this monster eat purple people, or is it a purple monster who eats people? Because at one point in the song he says he eats purple people. But I would have thought that he basically is purple and eats people.
I've never analyzed it like that before.
Well, you should really get into it. This stuff is deep, very deep. Anyway, there's Sheb Wooley. He was a jack of all trades in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he was an actor in a lot of Western movies.
Yes.
And and a singer and writer.
He he wrote Purple People Eater, but he also this is by far his biggest hit, 1958 on the MGM record label. But he was an actor and a singer, and he was in movies like High Noon.
That's right.
And Distant Drums.
Rawhide.
He played the role of
Joe Kidd with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, and
which you probably knew from Rawhide.
Yeah, he played the role of Pete Nolan in Rawhide, and he recorded comical country music under the pseudonym Ben Colder. But The Purple People Eater was his biggest tune of all time, and it was, in a way, kind of the tune that kind of started off the genre of monster music. And following this, we'll hear another great thematic type tune called Rockin' in the Graveyard by Jackie Morningstar. Sheb Wooley, The Purple People Eater.
Well, I saw the thing coming out of the sky. It had a one long horn and one big eye. I commenced to shaking and I said, hooray. It looks like a purple people eater to me. It was a one-eyed, one-horn flying purple people eater.
One-eyed, one-horn flying
A one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater sure looks strange to me. Well, he came down to earth and he lit in a tree. I said, Mr. Purple People Eater, don't eat me. I heard him say in a voice so gruff,
I wouldn't eat you 'cause you're so tough.
it was a one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horned, flying purple.
Hey, sister, what do you call that exercise you get?
It's rock and roll, brother, and we're rocking tonight.
So long. That's all. Goodbye.
Now you've heard of the Purple People Eater, and they sing of the witch doctor too. I guess these songs have sold 1,000,000 copies. Well, I got one to sell 1,000,000 too. Well, I was out in the graveyard about 12 o'clock. Something hit me, it felt like a rock. I thought it was an owl flying around and around, but it's just an old ghost digging holes in the ground. It said, wait a minute, boy, wait a minute, boy, I say. Wait a minute, boy, wait a minute, before you run away.
Now that's a guy called Jackie Morningstar, and nobody's ever seen a picture of him. His real name was Jackie Willie Morell, and if you've ever seen that CD box set called Rockin' Bones, and it's kind of raunchy stuff from the 50s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's on there. He's featured in there,
okay.
kind of on a tune. And he was from Mobile, Alabama, and it's thought that he was a Native American, like a Native Indian. And Rockin' in the Graveyard, 1959. His other 45 was under his real name, Jackie Morell, and his Jazz Masters, and it came out in 1963, and it was called Got the Blues on the JM record label. Anyway, the only record that was ever given any kind of airplay of any type was Rockin' in the Graveyard, Jackie Morningstar on the Sandy record label, the one that you just heard. Now, you brought a device here with a whole bunch of very colorful, kind of old-style records. What is that about?
Yeah,
How does
it's
it
really
work?
cool. It's like a record that's called Movie Records,
Yes.
and you just stick it on any record player, and it has like a bunch of cartoon characters at different stages, and when you turn the thing on, it spins
All right.
and reflects onto this little carousel type thing with mirrors on it. So it looks like the characters are moving around.
Okay, so the mirrors on the edge
Yeah.
reflect
Down,
what's
it's
on
on
the
an
label
angle.
and makes it appear that they're
moving.
rotating or moving like a cartoon.
Yeah,
would.
exactly.
So it's basically a kiddie collection.
That's right. Yeah, it is. You know, and you could play the record and listen to it and watch stuff going on.
We had a ooh-hara party. We had a ooh-hara party. Everybody had a screaming ball. Last night at Dracula Hall.
The cat show came with Frankenstein, blasted in a suit, poison in the wine. Weird things crawled from under the sea, and witches cackled up a storm of fiendish glee.
We had a ooh-hara party. We had a ooh-hara. Mr. Werewolf, Mr. Werewolf. Please don't give me Mr. Werewolf. Mr. Werewolf, Mr. Werewolf.
Please, Mr. Werewolf, let me get by.
Mr. Werewolf,
Yeah,
Mr. Werewolf.
'cause you know
It's actually very cool.
It's
Where
really
did you
neat.
come upon something like that?
Actually, a woman that owns a used clothing store, like just down the street from my store,
Yeah.
she bought it from someone with us in mind. She actually brought it up and said, "Hey, are you interested in this?"
Oh, yeah.
So we bought it.
How would you pay for this?
I can't remember. We bought actually another cool thing from her too. It's like an old Bakelite TV, and you put a record on, and you get this little film strip,
Yes.
and you stick it in this slot, and you can actually watch it. It plays it, and then the thing moves along. It slowly feeds this movie strip, and you can actually watch a slideshow on the TV screen.
Oh, cool.
So we bought both at the same time.
And these are like really rustic things to entertain children
Exactly.
in the 50s.
Yeah.
And they've now got an Americana hokey antique panache.
Yeah,
about
it's
them.
just really, I mean, we've had it sitting on the counter at the store for ages. We finally took it down, but everybody that came in would just be mesmerized by this thing.
Yes, I totally agree. And you could get all different records, and each one shows a
Oh
different...
yeah, like we got a whole stack here of all different ones, and
each one kind of shows a different pictorial.
that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many came, like how many they actually made at the time,
All
but
right.
I'm actually going to start looking for them now because they're so neat. You
I
know,
wonder if you would
and me were watching them, and it was pretty.
Well,
entertaining.
would you find things like this on eBay or?
Probably would. I actually
Yeah.
haven't searched. I just thought, next flea market or antique sale, I would have keep an eye out for them.
I've never really seen anything like it, but I got to say
No.
they're definitely cool
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
and worth wasting a lot of time watching.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to move now to a great monster music instrumental, and it's by a group called the Tarantulas, and they're quite rare 45. It's called Tarantula by, what else? The Tarantulas. And this record was actually sitting in the office at the original company that it was on, and the guy from,
It's even rarer now.
Anyway, the guy from Atlantic Records happened to be in the office and heard it as a demo and decided he wanted to lease it. And so it came out on Atlantic. And the Tarantulas were students at Arkansas State College, and they were originally called the Spiders. But it turned out that the Spiders...
Gee, what a stretch for a name.
It turned out there already was a group called the Spiders, which
that's
was a
right.
doo-wop group.
Well, also then there was, I think that was Alice Cooper's first band, was called the Spiders.
Was
as well,
that
I think.
right?
I think so.
Okay. I'm thinking of David Boy's group. They were called the Rats.
Oh,
Or the one that Mick Ronson was out of. Okay. So anyway, there already was a vocal group called the Spiders on the Imperial label, so they had to change their name. So they became the Tarantulas. Their first 45 was recorded for Fernwood Records in Memphis, Tennessee. And the guy from Atlantic Records, Jerry Wexler or whoever, was in the Fernwood Records office, heard the tune, and immediately said he wanted to lease it. And it comes in a picture 45, which is even rarer than the single itself. And this has got an advanced sound for the time. It almost has a San Francisco sound because it's very lead guitar and organ oriented. So there's a lot of great interplay between the lead guitar and the organ. And you can kind of envision, I think it was Clint Eastwood's very first movie was called Tarantula, and it was about these giant tarantulas moving across the desert, taking over the world. And I believe he was the leading man in it. That's where he got his start.
Yeah.
So if you can sort of envision a herd of giant tarantulas marching across the desert while you listen to this, I think it'll help the music.
Thank
both sides of a single by a group from Arkansas. They had 3 45s in total on 3 different labels, and this tune, Tarantula, was heavily promoted by the Atlantic record label, and it actually made the top 30 in Vancouver. But the single only really sold about 10,000 copies, so Atlantic passed on their option to release the follow-up. And the follow-up was called Spellbound and Kalijah, and if you're that interested, you can get both Tarantula and the follow-up on this CD compilation collection of stuff that was out on the Fernwood record label back in the 1950s and early 1960s.
That music does you kind of almost sort of see the tarantula,
Well,
the way they pluck the guitar strings, you can sort of see a big spider sort of walking.
Well, the thing about instrumentals, they would choose a title which conjured up the vision that the instrumental music suggested.
That's right, and it worked.
Yeah, so if you picture like Pipeline,
yeah,
you know, and you picture a breaking wave, which is the surfers call a pipeline.
That's right.
And you sort of picture it, and it goes diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle, and you can picture the wave breaking.
Yeah, oh, totally.
So records, instrumentals on old records have a very evocative title to go with the sound, and the title illustrates the music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, the Tarantulas, they only had 3 45s, and they're kind of obscure, but kind of great too, especially that single, which was a hit in Vancouver back in 1961. Now, I wanted to discuss an article. I haven't discussed this with you beforehand, so I don't know what your opinion is going to be on this, but there was an article that I thought was well written and kind of hit the nail on the head, and I'd kind of like to know what you think of it. Mm-hmm. This is out of the Vancouver Courier, and it was written by Peter Whalen. I don't know who he is. He's a fellow that wrote a letter to the editor. And it says, CDs are technically superior to vinyl LPs. It says, to the editor, inferior acoustic fidelity embraced by dull culture, August 21st. Jeff Olson's claim that vinyl is of a higher fidelity than compact disc is false. Vinyl is technically inferior to CD in every way. Even the stereo field is not comprised of left and right discrete channels. It is multiplexed, like FM radio. And a phonograph needle is technically only capable of reproducing the frequencies in the groove so inaccurately that a steep EQ algorithm must be employed for both the cut of the aluminum master and for the playback. If Olson had done rudimentary research on the subject, rather than rely on a single article in a pop culture magazine as the basis for his editorial, he'd know how inferior the fidelity of vinyl is to CD. But even with all of vinyl's shortcomings, it can still sound pretty good. That's because far more important to fidelity than the format the audio waveform is presented on is the acumen with which the audio waveform was developed. Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, which is often used by professionals as a reference standard to test the fidelity of audio equipment, was mastered from a 3rd-generation tape. That it sounds so good is a testament to the skill of Alan Parsons, who engineered it. Peter Whalen, Vancouver. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because most people feel the opposite to what he says. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know the technical. I mean, maybe this guy has studied it a long time. Maybe he knows the technical facts on this. But if you listen to a good pressing of a record on a good stereo, I don't think anything sounds as good as that.
Well, I have done that. I have a good stereo, and I have good pressings. Also, the hearing truck comes twice a year to my workplace and does hearing tests. Mm-hmm. I have absolutely perfect hearing, and I've had totally perfect hearing for several years. There was a point back in the 70s which I kind of flunked out on, but I think it's just because I wasn't paying attention. You know, because when they hear the little beeps, you're supposed to press buttons and things. Anyway, so I have absolutely perfect hearing, and I would say that CDs are superior sonically to LPs. Much as I love LPs, But I think people who have huge collections of vinyl don't want to admit there's something else out there superior, because that would mean that their collection was not worth as much, or that they had invested in the wrong field or something.
I know engineers that work in the recording industry, and they do both. They do analog and digital, and they tell me that they get fatigued from editing and working with digital music. They can't listen to it.
Grates on them after a while?
They can't do it for as long a time. Before, they could do it all day long, all night long, working on analog stuff. But with digital, it just, something about it that just fatigues people. I don't know what it is.
Might be harsh. Might be a little more harsh.
So, I mean, one good thing about CDs for the average person is that most people never took care of their records. That's why they're collectible. That's why they're worth money now, because people thrash them and they scratch them all up. So to them, a CD sounds wonderful because they're used to clicks and pops and all this other stuff. But people that looked after their records, I mean, you know, they never had that. So they don't have to compare it to a scratched up old record. So I think that the average person thinks that, yeah, CDs is the, you know, the way to go. It's so, but, you know, like my nephew, I mean, all his CDs are piled on top of his stereo cabinet, and not one of them's in the case. So they do skip eventually. They won't play it if you scratch them up.
Yeah, if you damage them, yes.
Where a record, I mean, you know, you can scratch it up quite a bit, and it'll still play.
Yes, that's right. It'll
unless
still
you
play,
really do a
but you
job of
suffer.
it. It doesn't sound as good.
Sounds like a battlefield with cannons going off, and that kind of thing.
You know, I mean, I listen to both, and I mean, I'm not, you know, I don't say one is way better than the other. I mean, I think records sound better to me. They sound better.
Okay.
But you know, I don't make a big deal about it. I listen to both. I listen to CDs and records.
I think CDs sound better because they have a greater depth of field. So you can hear a 3D sound where it's front to back. You can hear a lot of depth that goes back a long way. And whereas albums don't go back as far, and they're not as huge or dimensional, in my view. So I hear them as being sonically superior. However, there are so many things on vinyl have never come out on CD.
That's true.
So I got enormous amounts of vinyl simply because a lot of the stuff I go after is not available on CD and probably never will be.
Yeah,
it's too
that's very
obscure.
True. Yeah.
So I need both formats.
Absolutely.
And you'll hear both formats on Rockinitis.
That's right.
Okay, we're going to move now to a guy called John Zacharel, or as he was sometimes called, John Zackerly. I've seen his name spelled with a Y on the end of it. And this guy was a tremendous artist. And he was actually the first, can you help me with this, Rob?
Yep.
He was actually like the first horror artist before Bobby Boris Pickett. Maybe if I put that there, it'll help it stay up. No?
No.
Will that stay there?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Temporary.
Anyway, Dinner with Drac, 1958. So this is like 4 years before Bobby Boris Pickett with the Monster Mash. And we'll hear Dinner with Drac. Now this guy was one of those guys that hosted horror shows on
That's right.
television.
Yeah, he was.
And
had
he was
quite a big following.
Yeah, and he got a big following, and people looked forward to his introductions to the movies more than they liked the movies.
That's right.
And you know, he'd come out in his monster, in his Dracula kind of costume, and say, "I hope you're enjoying our presentation."
That's right. You know, you can picture, you know, a bunch of friends staying over at someone's house and staying up late and watching monster movies and having this guy, and he became a celebrity.
Yeah. And anyway, he got a recording contract with Cameo Records in 1958 and did Dinner with Drac, short for Dracula. And the follow-up to it was called Lunch with Mother Goose. But actually, I don't really care for the follow-up as much. So John Zacharel with Dinner with Drac, 1958.
Served for 3 at Dracula's house by the sea. The hors d'oeuvres were fine, But I choked on my wine when I learned that the main course was me.
I hope you've enjoyed this show, kind of a fun, lightweight kind of show by two heavyweights called Monster Music. My name is Michael Willmore, and my guest here was Rob Frith. The show was called Monster Music. Thanks for watching.
Rockinitis.
Oh, baby, baby, when I heard that beat, the Rockinitis just moved my feet.